The courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. A young black woman stood near the entrance, her presence unnoticed at first by most. She carried herself with quiet confidence, dressed in a crisp blazer, her ID tucked neatly in her bag. But one person did notice her, an officer stationed near the doors. His sharp gaze landed on her, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to something colder, something suspicious. "Ma'am, this area is restricted," the officer said, stepping in front of her. His voice was firm, carrying that edge of authority, the kind that made people hesitate before questioning it. But the woman didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze with an unwavering calm. "I have business here," she replied simply, reaching for her bag. The officer's jaw tightened. His eyes flickered over her, as if assessing whether she belonged. "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside," he continued, his hand hovering over his belt as if ready to escalate the situation at any moment. A few heads turned, sensing the rising tension. People in the gallery exchanged looks, whispering among themselves. The woman took a slow breath, as if deciding how to handle the situation. She didn't raise her voice, didn't lash out. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather case. With a flick of her wrist, she flipped it open, revealing something that made the officer freeze. His face drained of color. His confident stance faltered. It was a badge. The very thing he thought gave him power over her was now the reason his confidence crumbled. The officer swallowed hard, his fingers twitching at his sides. This wasn't just any woman. She was one of them, someone with authority, someone who could turn the situation around in an instant. And by the look on her face, she wasn't about to back down. Meanwhile, across town, another scene was unfolding, one that would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. A city bus rattled down the street, packed with passengers heading home after a long day. Among them sat a black teenager, his headphones in, nodding along to the rhythm of a song only he could hear. His backpack rested against his knees, the weight of school books pressing down on his legs. He barely noticed when the bus pulled to a stop, more people climbing on. Then he saw her, a pregnant woman, struggling to steady herself as she gripped the rail, her other hand cradling her belly. She glanced around, looking for an open seat, but there were none. The boy didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, he pulled out his earbuds, stood up, and gestured for her to sit. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning him as if trying to read his intentions. Then, with a grateful nod, she lowered herself into the seat with a sigh of relief. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice filled with exhaustion and gratitude. The teenager simply shrugged, stuffing his hands into his pockets. "It's nothing," he said, but he didn't sit back down. Instead, he stood near the door, swaying with the movement of the bus, unaware that this small act of kindness had just set something incredible in motion. A few minutes later, as the bus approached her stop, the woman shifted, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small piece of paper and scribbled something quickly before folding it and pressing it into the teenager's hand. "Read this later," she said, offering him a small smile before stepping off the bus and disappearing into the crowd. He frowned, staring at the note in his hand. Something about the way she'd given it to him made his stomach twist with curiosity. Slowly, he unfolded it, eyes scanning the words written in neat, hurried handwriting. And what he read changed everything. The teenager's fingers trembled slightly as he unfolded the note, his heartbeat picking up speed. The bus jolted over a pothole, but he barely noticed. His eyes scanned the messy handwriting, each word sinking into his mind like drops of ink spreading across a page. "You don't know me, but I've been looking for you. Please meet me at the cafe on 12th Street tomorrow at 4 p.m. It's important." His brows furrowed. Looking for him? That didn't make any sense. He didn't even know the woman. Had she mistaken him for someone else? And why was it important? He glanced out the window, trying to catch a glimpse of her before she disappeared into the crowd, but she was already gone. He let out a slow breath, folding the note and slipping it into his pocket. A part of him wanted to just ignore it. People were weird sometimes, and there was no telling what this was about. But another part of him, the part that always chased after things that didn't quite add up, told him he needed to go. Meanwhile, back at the courthouse, the officer's face remained tense, his mind racing for a way to fix what he had just done. The woman's badge still glinted in her hand, a silent reminder that the authority he had tried to use against her was now staring him down from the other side. "Is there a problem here, officer?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with something firm. The officer swallowed hard. He had been so sure, so certain that she was just another outsider who didn't belong here.
But now?
Now, he had no idea how badly he had just messed up. "No, ma'am," he said quickly, stepping back, his hands suddenly stiff at his sides. Just doing my job." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if measuring the truth in his words. Then, with an almost imperceptible shake of her head, she tucked her badge away and stepped past him, her heels clicking against the polished courthouse floor. People who had been watching the encounter quickly looked away, pretending they hadn't seen what had just happened. But she knew better. She had felt the weight of their stares, the silent judgment, the way people always waited to see what would happen when authority was challenged. As she walked down the hall, she exhaled softly, letting go of the tension in her shoulders. She had dealt with officers like him before, ones who thought a uniform gave them power over anyone they chose. But today, he had learned an important lesson. She just hoped he wouldn't forget it. Later that night, the teenager sat in his small bedroom, the note still in his hand. He turned it over between his fingers, staring at the words again. He had questions. Too many of them. Who was the woman? How had she been looking for him? And why did it feel like whatever she had to say would change something big? His mother's voice called from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready." He stuffed the note under his pillow and got up, pushing the thoughts aside for now. The next day, the air felt heavier as he walked toward the cafe. It wasn't anything special, just a small shop squeezed between a laundromat and a hardware store, the kind of place people only noticed if they were looking for it. The bell over the door jingled when he stepped inside, and for a moment, he hesitated. What if this was a mistake? But then he saw her. The woman from the bus was sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. She looked up as if sensing him, her eyes meeting his with something unreadable. He took a deep breath and walked over. "You came," she said, offering a small, relieved smile. "Yeah," he said, pulling out the chair across from her. "Guess I was curious." She nodded, setting her cup down. For a moment, there was silence. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out a small, old photograph, and slid it across the table toward him. He frowned and picked it up. The picture was faded, edges worn from time, but the faces were still clear. A man and a woman, standing close together, smiling like they shared a secret only they understood. And in the woman's arms, a baby. The teenager's stomach flipped, because the baby in the picture looked just like him. His throat went dry. He looked up at the woman, questions flashing through his mind so fast he couldn't grab onto just one. "What is this?" he finally managed to ask. She took a deep breath, her fingers twisting together. "It's a part of the story you don't know yet." And just like that, the ground beneath him didn't feel so solid anymore. The boy's hands trembled as he stared at the words on the paper. His own name, his inheritance. But what did that even mean? His family had never been rich. He didn't have some long-lost relative who would leave him a fortune. At least, not that he knew of. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. His mind was racing in circles, trying to make sense of something that felt completely out of his control. The woman on the bus, who was she really? Why had she chosen him? And what exactly had she just handed over? A noise outside made him jump. He quickly folded the paper and shoved it deep into his backpack before moving toward the window. The street below was quiet. Nothing seemed out of place. But the uneasy feeling in his gut wouldn't go away. He sat back down, rubbing his hands over his face. Maybe he should just ignore all of this. Pretend it never happened. But the problem was, he knew himself too well. He couldn't ignore it. He needed answers. Somewhere across town, the officer sat in a small, dimly lit office, his mind still reeling from what had happened in the courtroom. His hands were clenched into fists, his face hot with anger and something else, something closer to fear. He had messed up.
Badly.
And the worst part was, he hadn't even realized who she was until it was too late. The FBI chief. He had humiliated her in front of an entire courtroom, and now his career was hanging by a thread. He could already hear the whispers spreading through the department. He slammed his fist onto the desk, breathing hard. There had to be a way out of this. Some way to fix what had gone so terribly wrong. But deep down, he knew there wasn't. He exhaled, pressing his fingers against his temples. His phone buzzed on the desk, and when he glanced at the screen, his stomach twisted. Unknown number. He hesitated before picking up. Yeah. There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then a voice, low and deliberate. You screwed up. The officer's grip on the phone tightened. He didn't recognize the voice, but the weight behind the words sent a chill up his spine. I don't know who you think you're talking to, he started, but the voice cut him off. You should know. Another pause. You went after the wrong person. And now, you've got a target on your back. The call ended. The officer sat there, staring at the phone, his heart pounding. Back at his house, the boy finally decided he couldn't just sit around waiting for answers. He had to do something. He grabbed his backpack and slipped the paper inside before heading for the door. His mother called out from the kitchen. Where are you going? He hesitated, his fingers tightening around the strap of his bag. Just out for a bit. I won't be long. She gave him a look, the kind that told him she knew he wasn't telling the full truth. But after a moment, she just sighed and nodded. Be careful. He nodded quickly and stepped outside. The night air was cool against his skin as he made his way back toward the bus stop. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but one thing was clear. He needed to find that woman again. Because whatever this was, whatever she had pulled him into, it was bigger than him. And something told him he wasn't the only one looking for answers. Somewhere in the darkness, someone was already watching, waiting, and he had just walked straight into it. The city felt different at night. The usual noise of the day had settled into something quieter, something more uncertain. The boy moved quickly, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his mind racing. Every step felt heavier, like he was walking toward something he wasn't ready for. But there was no turning back now. His phone buzzed in his pocket, making him jump. He pulled it out, his stomach twisting when he saw an unknown number flashing on the screen. He hesitated before answering. A woman's voice, steady, urgent. Don't go back to the bus stop. His breath caught. Wait, who is this? You need to listen, she continued. They're already looking for you. If you go there, you won't be coming back. His fingers tightened around the phone. Who's looking for me?
A pause.
Then, softly, the same people looking for me. His pulse pounded in his ears. He glanced over his shoulder, suddenly feeling exposed. Why me? I don't even know what this is about. You will. The voice wavered, just slightly. Soon. And then just like that, the call ended. His hands shook as he lowered the phone. He looked around, half expecting to see someone stepping out of the shadows, watching him. But the street was empty. Or at least, it looked that way. His gut told him to run. Get home. Forget all of this. But another part of him, the part that had taken the note from that woman, the part that had unfolded that letter with his own name written on it, told him he needed to keep going. Somewhere across the city, the officer sat in his car, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His career was already hanging by a thread. But this was worse. The unknown caller, the threats, the growing realization that whatever mess he had walked into was bigger than anything he had ever handled before. It was all spiraling out of control. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He stared at it for a long time before finally answering. A deep voice, steady and firm. You want to fix this? The officer swallowed hard. Who is this? You don't ask the questions. A pause. Meet me at the warehouse on 8th, 30 minutes. The call cut off. The officer gritted his teeth, his pulse pounding. He had no choice. The boy kept moving, his mind spinning in 1,000 directions. He didn't know where to go anymore. The bus stop was too dangerous. But if he didn't go there, how would he find her again? Then a sound behind him, soft, almost careful, like someone trying not to be heard. His heart lurched. He picked up his pace. The sound followed. He forced himself not to turn around, not to panic. But his breath was coming faster now, his hands clenched into fists. A street lamp flickered overhead. Then, a hand grabbed his backpack, yanking him backward. He barely had time to react before he was pulled into the alleyway. He gasped, struggling, but a voice hissed in his ear. "Stop fighting. I'm not here to hurt you." His body stiffened. The grip loosened just enough for him to spin around. It was her, the woman from the bus. Her face was partially hidden under the shadows of her hood, but there was no mistaking her eyes, sharp, desperate, searching his face like she was making sure he was real. "You shouldn't have come out here," she said, her voice low. "I didn't exactly have a choice," he shot back, his breath still uneven. "What's going on? What does this letter mean?" Her expression darkened. "It means you're in danger." His stomach dropped. "Why?" She looked past him, checking the street before stepping closer. "Because you're not just some random kid who gave up his seat on a bus," she said quietly. "You're part of something much bigger."
His mouth went dry.
"I don't understand." "You will," she said. "But first, we have to go."
Now.
Before he could argue, before he could even process what was happening, she grabbed his arm and pulled him deeper into the alley. And behind them, in the distance, headlights appeared, slowly rolling toward them, like a hunter closing in on its prey. The boy's pulse pounded in his ears as he let the woman drag him through the alley. His sneakers scraped against the pavement, every instinct telling him to pull away, to demand more answers. But the way she moved, the way her grip tightened every time he hesitated, told him this wasn't the time for questions. Behind them, the low hum of an engine rolled through the night, slow and deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. The headlights cut through the darkness, bouncing off the damp brick walls, stretching their shadows long and distorted. They turned a corner sharply, and the woman pressed him against the wall, holding a finger to her lips. He swallowed hard, barely breathing. The car slowed as it reached the mouth of the alley. For a moment, nothing moved. The air itself felt tight, stretched thin with tension. The boy could feel his heartbeat hammering against his ribs. He could hear the blood rushing in his ears. Then, a door creaked open. Footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. The woman's hand twitched at her side, like she was ready to grab something, a weapon maybe. The boy had no idea. He just knew that whatever was happening, it was real. It was dangerous. And somehow he was caught in the middle of it. The footsteps stopped just a few feet away. A voice, smooth and deep, cut through the silence. "You can come out now." The woman didn't move. Neither did the boy. A long pause. Then a chuckle. "You think I don't know you're there?" The boy felt the woman's grip tighten on his wrist. She leaned in, her breath barely a whisper. "When I say run, run." His stomach twisted. "But don't stop. Don't look back." Before he could say another word, she shoved him hard. His feet stumbled over the pavement, and then he was running. Behind him, the sound of movement, a struggle, a sharp grunt, a crash. He wanted to turn around, but her words rang in his head. "Don't stop. Don't look back." So he didn't. He sprinted down the alley, his lungs burning, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. The city blurred around him, neon lights flickering in the distance, the hum of traffic just beyond his reach. He had no idea where he was going. Then, just as he reached the end of the alley, a car screeched to a stop in front of him. His heart leaped into his throat as the back door flew open. A man sat inside, face hidden in the shadows. "Get in." The boy froze. His whole body screamed at him to run the other way, but before he could decide, the man spoke again, this time, his voice softer. "If you want to live, get in the car." The boy's hands clenched into fists. His breath came in ragged gasps. Every part of him was trapped between fear and desperation. Then, behind him, a gunshot. His blood turned to ice. He had no choice. He dove into the car. The door slammed shut behind him, and the tires screeched as they sped off into the night. He barely had time to catch his breath before the man turned to him. "You have no idea what you just got yourself into, do you?" The boy shook his head, his throat too dry to speak. The man exhaled, staring out the windshield. "Well," he muttered, "it's too late now." And as the city lights blurred past them, the boy realized he had just stepped into something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. The car sped through the city streets, weaving between lanes as the boy sat frozen in the back seat, gripping his knees. His heart was still pounding from the gunshot, from the chaos, from the fact that his entire world had flipped upside down in a matter of hours. The man driving didn't look at him, didn't ask if he was okay. He just kept his eyes on the road, jaw clenched tight, knuckles white against the steering wheel. After what felt like forever, the car skidded to a stop in front of an abandoned building. The man turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Get out." The boy hesitated. "Where are we?" The man exhaled sharply. "Somewhere safe. For now." The boy pushed open the door, stepping into the cold night air. His hands were shaking. He wasn't sure if it was from fear, adrenaline, or both. The man led him inside, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. It smelled like dust and old concrete. Flickering overhead lights cast eerie shadows along the walls. Then they turned a corner and stopped. The boy's breath caught in his throat. The woman from the bus was there, bruised, blood on her sleeve, but standing, alive. Relief flooded through him, but it was short-lived. She wasn't alone. A group of people stood behind her, men and women in suits, their faces unreadable. One of them stepped forward. A woman, older, with sharp eyes that seemed to take everything in at once. "So," she said, folding her arms, "you're the kid." The boy swallowed hard. "What's going on?" The woman exchanged a glance with the man who had brought him here. Then she turned back to him. "You were never supposed to be involved," she said. "But you are now. And there's no going back." The boy's mind spun. None of this made sense. Involved in what? The woman sighed, like she was debating how much to tell him. Finally, she spoke. "The note you received wasn't random," she said. "Neither was that seat on the bus." The room felt like it tilted. The boy stared at her. "What are you talking about?" The woman from the bus finally spoke, her voice softer than before. "You were a test." His stomach dropped. "A test?" She nodded. "We needed to know what kind of person you were. If you would take that seat for yourself, or if you'd give it up for someone in need." The boy felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. "You mean none of this was real?" The older woman shook her head. "Oh, it was very real. That officer in the courtroom? The people after us? That was real." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "But the moment you stood up on that bus, you set something in motion. Something much bigger than you." The boy's pulse thundered in his ears.
"Why?"
"Why me?" The woman studied him for a long moment. "Because we needed someone who wouldn't hesitate to do the right thing. Someone who would act on instinct, not fear. Someone we could trust." His head spun. He had thought this was just a moment of kindness, just a small act. But now he was standing in a room full of strangers, being told that his life had changed forever because of it. The man who had brought him here finally spoke. "You have a choice," he said. "You can walk away, pretend none of this happened, and go back to your life." The boy's mouth felt dry. "And if I don't?" The woman smiled, but there was something almost sad in her eyes. "Then you step into a world where people like you make a difference. A real one. But it won't be easy. And once you're in for good." Silence filled the room. The boy looked at them, at their faces, at the weight of their words pressing down on him. He had been afraid before, but now something different stirred inside him. He thought about that moment on the bus, about how small it had felt at the time, just a simple decision to give up a seat. And yet, somehow, that one choice had led him here. He took a breath. Then another. And then finally he spoke. "What do I have to do?" The room was silent as the boy's words hung in the air. He wasn't sure what answer he had been expecting, but the small nod from the woman told him it had been the right one. She studied him for a moment longer before turning to the others in the room. He stays. No one argued. No one questioned it. It was as if they had already known what his decision would be. The man who had driven him here clapped a hand on his shoulder, a sign of approval, but the weight of everything was still settling in the boy's chest. The woman from the bus, the one who had started all of this, stepped forward. "You probably have 100 questions," she said gently. "But first you need to understand something. There is no going back. The people after us, they won't stop just because you decided to walk away." The boy swallowed hard, realizing what she was saying. He had been a part of this the moment he took that note. Maybe even before that. His decision just made it official. The older woman, clearly the leader of this group, sighed, running a hand through her hair. "You need to lay low for a while," she said. "At least until we figure out our next move." The boy frowned. "But my family, my school, I can't just disappear." She gave him a small, understanding nod. "You won't. But things are going to change. You won't be able to just live the way you did before." His stomach twisted. It was a lot to process. Too much. He glanced at the woman from the bus again. "Why were those people after you?" She hesitated before answering. "Because of what I know." The boy waited, but she didn't elaborate. Instead, the man beside her spoke. "They don't want the truth to come out." The weight of those words sent a chill through the boy. Whatever this was, it was bigger than he could have imagined. And now, somehow, he was in the middle of it. They spent the next hour explaining everything, or at least what they could. It was a tangled mess of corruption, power, and secrets that certain people would do anything to keep hidden. The woman from the bus had stumbled onto something dangerous. And the people who wanted to silence her weren't just after her anymore. The boy listened, his mind racing to keep up. He wasn't sure how he fit into all of this, but he understood one thing clearly. He had a choice. He could let fear take over, let himself be just another person who looked away from the truth. Or he could stand up, the way he had before, and do something about it. By the time they finished talking, exhaustion weighed heavy on his shoulders. The woman saw it in his eyes and placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You should rest," she said. "Tomorrow, we figure out the next step." He nodded, though sleep felt impossible. Too many thoughts ran through his mind, too many questions he didn't even know how to ask. But as he lay down on the makeshift bed they had given him, one thought stuck with him. It had all started with a single moment, a decision to give up his seat on a bus. And somehow, that one choice had led him here. The next morning, he woke up to the sound of hushed voices outside the room. When he stepped out, everyone was already gathered, their faces tense. The older woman looked at him, then motioned for him to come closer. "We have a problem," she said quietly. He felt his stomach drop. "What kind of problem?" She handed him a phone. He hesitated before taking it, his eyes scanning the screen. It was a news article. And right there, staring back at him, was a blurry image of himself from last night, running through the alley. His breath caught in his throat. "They're looking for you now," the woman said. "Which means we need to move. Fast." The boy barely had time to process before the group sprang into action. Bags were packed, plans whispered back and forth. The world was closing in, and the reality of his choice was sinking in fast. The woman from the bus, his only real connection to this whole thing, pulled him aside. "Are you scared?" she asked. He hesitated. Then slowly he nodded. She gave him a small, knowing smile. "Good. That means you understand what's at stake." He looked at her, searching her face. "Do you regret it? Getting involved?" She exhaled, glancing away for a moment before meeting his eyes again. "No," she said simply. "Because doing the right thing isn't about being fearless. It's about acting, even when you are." Her words stuck with him as they moved. He didn't know what was coming next, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. As the car pulled away from the safe house, disappearing into the morning light, he stared out the window, watching the city blur past. Somewhere out there, people were still living their lives, unaware of the battle happening beneath the surface. And somehow, against all odds, he had become part of it. Maybe he wasn't ready. Maybe he'd never be. But one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again.